Haas is our chump. Woo! And then Steve Rowe, Mark Miller, Eric Hatcher on our panel. And the way it works, many of you sent us questions, and if you're in the audience, I think I picked mostly questions from people that are here for the conference. So if you're in the audience, just stand up and let us know where you are in case Haas needs to stall. He can ask you clarifying questions. So he'll try to answer the questions on the spot. He hasn't seen them. I made sure all day that he didn't look at my computer while I was working on them. And the judges judge if he's got it right. If not, he tries again. And we kind of repeat the cycle and until we decide to move on. And then at the end, the judges will decide who actually stumped him. And there are prizes, and there are 3 prizes. A $100 Amazon gift card, $50 Amazon gift card, and a $25 Amazon gift card. So they will be delivered as gift cards, and hopefully Amazon will figure out the currency that you're trying to
Hopefully they will work in whatever country you live in.
Okay, so ready? Woo! All right, let's go. All right, first question. I'm gonna do.
It had to be a long one, and it had to be in Chinese.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Normally, it's nice to have a short, easy one to like warm up with, but
I didn't want to be too easy.
I have an index with Chinese. This is. I have to read it, so you have to bear with me while I read it, and I'm going to read it out loud because this is a presentation. I have a mic, so that's what I do. I have an address in Chinese, and it looks like that. And I want to break it up into individual address elements. How do I compose a string query that finds the index entry that best matches the sentence? The basis must be that the match against any individual field must be exact. So in the example, the index entry for A equals something, and A2 equals something else, would be a reasonable hit. Oi. I don't, I feel like I need to know Chinese to understand the question, because I'm like trying to compare the symbols to understand why is this, is this
So
a McHale question?
No, it's not.
Oh, I was going to say, 'cause normally this is what I'm like, fuck you, where is he anyway? McHale, raise your hand. Okay, so now I know where McHale is. Now, who asked this question? Are you here? Maybe he is. Maybe he's hiding. No. Oh, he's not. You don't think he is. Okay, that's fine.
Oh.
Does anyone who understands this question think they could explain it to me? Go ahead. Oh, can we get him a mic? Sorry, I forget. I know your name starts with an M, and I know it has an A and a J in it, and then it ends in an S, and there's some other vowels in there, and I don't remember the order, so I'm not going to try and say it. But yeah, can you? Okay. What am I missing here? Because I don't understand the Chinese enough to know why this is a hard question.
No, I don't think we really need to know the Chinese to answer this question.
Okay.
Because even if the problem is in English or in French or other language, we can have this problem. And I think they have a text without those fields explicitly explained, and they want to extract such information. And to me, I think it's, you cannot do this directly in Solr. Maybe they need some NLP model somewhere, like a path of speech tagging, to extract such information like state, city, district, and other things from the text.
Oh, okay. So if I'm understanding, you're saying that forget the fact that it's in Chinese. The important thing is here's a sentence, and some part of that sentence is a city, and some part is a state. And how can you?
District,
Okay. Yeah. So right. And how do you say your name? I'm sorry. It's say it.
Majir is my name.
Majiris.
Yeah.
Right. So what Majiris is explaining that I didn't understand was that this is supposed to be the input, and it's trying to sort of say, given these fields in my index, how do I build a query such that the right parts of the sentence go against the right fields in my index to get good exact matches on the city and good exact matches on the state, things like that. And yeah, I don't know that there is a really, really good solution that you can embed right in Solr for a problem like this, because you do want to use more. I guess is it an NLP? Yeah, I guess it's an NLP problem. It's really, to me, it's more of like it's almost like a part of speech problem, except that instead of finding nouns and verbs, you're finding things that frequently appear in city names and things that frequently appear in states. I mean, in an ideal world, you would know there's a finite list of all districts and a finite list of all cities, and so you would run that through something that would pull those out. the way I would sort of tackle this problem if I didn't have tools like that and I really wanted to do it just in Solr is I would try to build up queries where I took the whole input and I built, like n-grams or shingles on all of the different pieces of the query, and then I queried those against my various fields, and I would try to rely on the term statistics to help me find the fact that since there is a very finite number of districts, that if I get a match on the district field, which I should boost the shit out of, that should help drown out those words in a street name or something like that. It's definitely a problem you would ideally want to solve using a tool that knows very specifically about street and county and city, teasing those pieces out. And there's some good APIs for that. But I would hope that just using something like shingles against those fields would also help you do a reasonably good job against it. Do the judges have any better solutions? Did the judges understand this question any better than I did? Let's start with that.
No.
No? Mark Miller, that's your microphone. I didn't make you wear one, but you have to. No, you're good. Just
No.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Insightful contribution from Mark Miller. Yes, Steve.
I think this is a named entity recognition problem. The document being passed in doesn't have that stuff recognized already, right? So it's not fielded. It's just free text, and you're supposed to be able to find these things.
Right. Whereas you're thinking the districts are the named entities that you should be able to extract that. Right.
Addresses.
Yeah. I still think that things like the street names though are more.
You wrote the query in Lucene that does this.
I did.
The field masking span query does this.
No. Did you?
Because they want to
question?
see how many matches across how many fields match, and then you've got to do, each field matches, and the more fields that match, the better the query needs to return. That's a higher scoring document, right?
But I don't think you need that field masking spans for that. That field masking spans query, by the way, is an abomination that I wrote and you should never use. But it exists for a very small and very specific set of problems that I won't go into. But the point being, I don't know that
your example in the docs for that query is more or less this example, except for you use teacher ID and first name and last name. Because read the last sentence there. The more fields that match, the better.
But that's like the more unique fields, I think, is what they're saying. They're
but
saying
they have to match together. That's why the masking thing works, right? Because you've got to match the same one for that state and for that city, et cetera, right?
But you still would have to know what parts to put in what parts of the query. You'd have to. You still have to address the problem Steve's talking about, which is how do you know when to take a piece of your input and query it against the city field and when that's better? Because it's not just enough to say you get coverage across the whole input where some of it matches everything. You want to make sure that the one that matches against city versus the one that matches against state is the best one, right?
So what Grant's talking about is handling the query side, but if you don't split it apart into fields at index time, then you don't even get there. That's why you need the named entity recognition at index time in order to be able to split it into different fields.
Yeah, I kind of see what you're saying, Grant, but I feel like that would be. I don't know. I can't. I'm having a hard time picturing how that would actually solve the problem in a way that would actually score documents better when the city name is really a city and not a street name.
So there's some query parsing piece that you need to have that doesn't exist in Lucene Solr.
And that's where I feel like you need the named entity stuff. So, okay.
Ishan wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to make a quick comment here regarding a geocoder that I was trying to build.
Right. Yeah, this is a geocoder is what you want here.
This is exactly the problem of a geocoder, where the index structure, the document structure had different fields. One is a state field, one is a city field, one is a street field. So the approach I used to solve this problem would be at the time of loading this index, at the time of loading this service, I created Bloom filters out of each of these fields, and each of the Bloom filter, let's say a city Bloom filter, will contain all the terms that are contained in the city. And the Bloom filter provides a very quick classification mechanism, as you talked about, probably similar to named entity recognition. And then we could arrive at classifications, which parts of the query could be a street, which could be a city, and then try to figure out which of the combinations make most sense by firing Boolean queries onto the index.
Right, but that's you're in that case you're using the term stats in the index to help you identify the individual what Steve would call the entities in the named entity version of the problem. You're saying in the city field, here are the terms I've got, and here are the stats I've built up into my Bloom filter. to help me identify when I see a city again, right?
Yeah, not
Yeah.
really, not really. So
Oh, not really? Wait, so I totally misunderstood what you said. So when you were nodding, you meant no. Okay, sorry, keep going.
So given an example like hotels near Main Street, Denver, where Maine itself can be a city, it could be a state, and identified across various Bloom filters, and Denver itself could be, let's say, a city, it could be a county. So we really probably wouldn't know upfront which annotation of Denver makes most sense.
Right.
Your suggestion is right, probably we can use the term statistics, but the user could mean anything probably. So there could be multiple choices for the
Right.
interpretation.
Yeah. Oh, but so there's no solution. You're not saying there's a solution to
Yeah.
that. You're just saying that is a problem.
Yeah, because that
Yeah,
could,
okay,
it could be ambiguous. It could be ambiguous. That's
Right.
what I'm
Ambiguity is all about. Yeah. Okay. Right. So we're all in agreement. This is hard. Anybody disagree? No. Okay. And it's ambiguous. Anybody disagree? Okay. Good. Eric, you haven't said anything yet.
I
and-
was simply going to point to his presentation that he did.
Okay. That's good. I should have pointed to his presentation, but I forgot. So Sean has stumped me now.
Okay.
Anything else about this question, or should we move on? I feel like.
I think we can move on.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's do the next one in Korean.
No, the next one I thought we'd go live.
Oh,
if anybody has
okay.
a question from the audience.
The studio audience.
raise
Does
your
anyone in
hand.
the studio audience have a question that they'd like to throw out that they didn't have time to email in advance because they were lazy? Because you all should have known to email in advance. This is how I shame people out of asking questions live. No? Okay.
No.
Well, I think we've got two mics. So Sean's got a mic, and Evan's got a mic, and who the fuck is that?
Tan.
My-
Tan.
Oh, is that Tan?
Tan,
All right,
yeah.
my eyes are shit. Tan's got a mic. So we've got 3 mics in the room. So if at any
Yeah.
point you want to ask a question, just go steal the mic and interrupt me, whoever's talking.
Yeah. Actually, I have a sort of blank slide like this after every sent-in question.
you're
So
killing me,
lots of opportunities.
You're killing me.
If he says something you didn't understand, you can
Yes, by all
do
means.
that. All right, ready?
No.
All right. This is the question that I
Oh,
got.
this is a Mikhail question. as soon as I see milliseconds on a slide, now he's fucking high. Oh, there he is. He moved like 10 feet just because he knows my vision is so bad. All right. The query runs 47 milliseconds. How to make it run in 10 milliseconds and return the same result? Hit it twice? Do I win? Hit the cache? Hit the cache? Is that not a good enough one? What the query on sale true, field list equals score, rows equals 100, sort doc ID descending. Doc ID descending? That's an excellent question. Wait. See, okay, so for those of you who don't know, this question was asked by Mikhail. Raise your hand, Mikhail. Wave to everybody so they all know what my nemesis looks like. Mikhail is actually a very nice man who's done some cool stuff, but he always wins Stump the Chump, which is why he has been nicknamed my nemesis. And he always asks questions that he already knows the answer to and has already solved and has figured out, and he specifically words them. He's like that worst teacher you had in high school who knew exactly how to word the question so that even though you totally knew the answer once that was explained to you, just the way it was worded just made you feel like an idiot. Yeah, I'm going to stand, first off, I'm going to stand behind my first answer of use the cache, because the second time you do this query, it'll be very fast. But I'm gonna try to talk my way through this here. I suspect that part of the issue is that because you're asking for the scores. Wait, you said same results, right? So, I mean, the scores in this case, because it's a Boolean query and it's matching on sale true, the scores of this are always going to be a constant of 1. I think the fact that you're asking for the score makes it do a little more internal logic, even though the scores are always going to be 1, especially since you're not using scores in any way in the sort. So my first off-the-cuff guess, which is probably wrong, is that if you change this query so that you don't include field equals score, and instead you take advantage of like a doc transformer to just return the constant 1 as the score, that might be faster because then it won't attempt to compute the score. But Mikhail's not nodding. He's also not shaking his head. Either that or my eyes are even worse than I thought because I don't see.
Yes, it's wrong guess.
It's
Continue.
wrong. Yes, it's wrong.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
so you're like, Sean, you're going to nod and tell me no, absolutely not. Okay, this is where I demonstrate that the judges don't know any better than me.
I'd like maybe pre-sort it, add the documents in the reverse order and not do that sort. I think the problem is though, like in your caching answer, maybe it's too fast to get like 10 milliseconds.
Oh, you think my answer would get you like 0 milliseconds and 10? You have to find a way to slow it down. Okay.
Not to mention on sale was something that you're going to cache anyway, and that should be a filter query.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Buy a faster computer. That's true. Yeah, you don't really. Well, but there's a num found. The num found is very important there. So. I mean, my next guess would be to try a filter query. At this point, though, I'm just going to randomly try changing the query over and over again until I get the magic number 10 milliseconds.
In this case, you don't care about the rows either because all you're turning is a score. So if you want num found, rows equals 0.
Well, no, but he says he wants 100 rows. He wants the number 1 100 times. He wants the number 1 to come back 100 times, and he wants the num found. So, I mean, I'm assuming that Mikhail wrote this question in a very specific way because that's what Mikhail always does, and the answer, like, get rid of rows is not good enough. I could be wrong, though. Any other suggestions from the judges here? Because, I mean, like I said, the next thing I would try maybe if this was, again, on a test and I had multiple attempts to get it right or wrong is going to a filter query. But that kind of is basically my cache answer all over again. So put us out of our misery here, Mikhail. What is the secret to why this is slow?
You can sort. You can request sort in ascending order. So if you sort
Are
them
you fucking kidding me? This is your point? Is just that sorting by doc ID descending is slow? That's your point?
So it's an answer for the question.
I had an answer for the question too, and my answer was just as valid as your answer.
I think he should give you a gift card.
All right, yes. Yeah, you owe me a prize. So for people who don't understand why I'm annoyed at Mikhail, his answer is that because we're doing descending doc ID sort, doc ID is the stage is attacking me. Doc ID. Well, I show everyone my ass here for a minute. There we go. Much better. Doc ID is the internal.
Just the camera guy.
Yeah, just the camera guy. It's no one else. Doc ID, when we use it in this context, it literally means like the internal low level under the covers order that the documents are added in. That should really never be used for much unless you know that you index your documents in a certain order. And when you do it at ascending, it's very cheap. When you do it descending, it's just as expensive as any other sort. And so his point is, in this case, we're not getting back any fields. We're only getting back score. The score is going to be constant, so it doesn't matter what order we do the sort in, which is just as valid as my point of, well, if you want descending doc and you don't care, then it doesn't matter. But he's saying it doesn't matter in a different way, because that's the one that he thought up in advance when he was all smug and in his room and going, ha, 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 I've got him. So, all right. I think we've beaten this one to death.
Right. All right, has anyone thought of a question they'd like to ask?
Oh, wait, we have something.
Yeah.
Using the point type. Okay, so point type, for people who don't know, because again, I'm stalling, is...
I have no idea.
It's a way to... It's like a lat-lon type field type, except it's not specific to lat-lon, but it falls under the spatial stuff that got added around 4.0. So we have a point type field of n dimensions, which is how it differs from lat-long. You can have as many dimensional spaces as you want. Some fixed reference point. How can we query Solr, compute the Euclidean distance, not the spherical distance, between P and R, and sort the results by that distance? We know we can replace the point type with a list of n components and use the distance function, but we'd really like to use the point type. Okay, so could somebody remind me what Euclidean distance is? Because I already have lost this question, because I don't remember.
Line.
Straight line distance? How's the difference in the spherical distance? We know we can replace the point type with a list of n components and use the distance function, but we'd really like to use the point type. Why would you, who asked this? Why would you really like to use the point type? Wait, no, there's literally 2 feet from you is a guy with a mic. There we go. Woo!
Because we have a lot of dimensions, we don't want to have to add all the dimensions to our schema, and we don't want to have to mention all of the components in the queries.
Because point type lets you do it as a multi-value.
It's mostly about the queries. We don't want our queries to be ginormously long.
So can you, since these two guys intimidated me with math and concepts of drilling to the center of the earth, which scared me, can you explain to me what the Euclidean distance is?
It's exactly like I think it's called the dist function, except the dist function is expecting all the n components as the parameters, and I don't know if there's one that works for point types. So the dist function, if you have n components, and then you have n components your other vector, you just take the difference between each of the corresponding components, you square those differences, you add them all up, and you take the square root. It's exactly like the Pythagorean
Right.
theorem, except in n dimensions.
Right.
And there's
okay.
already a function for it where
And
if
there's a
I,
function
if I
for it, but
have
the function expects you to pass in all of it, as
Exactly.
opposed to I have a multi-valued field for this.
exactly.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one. It's just on the cusp of me understanding it, but like it's like at the point where I know I don't know it. You know what I mean? Like,
Is it possible to do it by writing our own function implementation?
I think it would be. There's definitely. So that is a much easier question to answer. There's definitely you could definitely write custom functions that deal with multi-valued fields and take advantage of things like the multi-valued doc value stuff. So it should certainly be possible. Why the existing one doesn't do it, I don't know. That's where I started to get worried that maybe there's.
I don't think there is an existing one. There's one that does spherical distance between points.
Right. No,
I
but like
think,
you said,
yeah.
the dist function, right? Like it makes me wonder why David Smiley, who's brilliant and does a lot of the spatial stuff, why he hasn't just already written it if it was that easy. Like that's where I start to worry that I'm going to give you bad advice. It seems like something that should totally be possible as a function that'll work on multi-valued point types, which is why I'm like, it should work, but if it was that easy, Smiley would have done it.
We have the same reaction.
Yeah, you know, so does it? Okay, so I mean, I'm gonna totally go. This is one of those, like I was starting to say, I know enough about this to know I don't know. So I'm just gonna say that outright. Do you remember enough about this specific niche area of spatial to know? Okay, so my answer is I think you could. I think you could do it as a custom one. I think it wouldn't even have to be that custom.
By the way, I suggested that answer, so you don't get credit for that.
You suggest? No, I don't know. That's why I said up front, like I know that I don't know this. That's really a second question. The second question is, can we write a custom function? And my answer to can you write a custom blank is always yes, of course, go write it. I have no idea how hard it'll be, and I have no idea if it'll be efficient, but you can of course write that. As far as this question, I don't know. So I don't know. I'm out there. And I don't think any of the judges know either, so I don't feel that bad about that one. I don't feel guilty at all.
Okay. We got one.
Oh!
Great.
All right, hold on. Wait. Before we get to your question, since you are the first brave soul,
Yep.
would you like Taming Text or Tika in Action? Would you like either of these books? I'm kind of hoping the answer is yes, of course. I would love one of these books. Otherwise, this looks like a really bad prize. Tika in Action? Excellent. We have a taker for Tika in Action. See, there are door prizes, ladies and gentlemen. There are additional prizes, all for being audience participation guinea pigs. Except the next person who raises your hand, I'm going to know it's just because you want a book, and fuck you don't get one. Sorry, what was your name?
Ludovic.
Oh, okay, hold on. Can you say that slower? Ludovic. Awesome. Welcome, Ludovic. What's your question?
Okay. How would you implement a versioning system like SVN on top of Solar? And the two things are, we don't want to reindex the content, and we would like to be able to query the Solar index with a specific revision.
Right. Yeah, that's tough.
Could you rephrase it so I can take it?
Yeah, sorry. So the question was about, sort of wanting to build something like a revision control type system similar to, like SVN or CVS or Git on like a Solar sort of platform so that you can take advantage of the full text searching against revision. The question is, do you really care about the historical revisions, or do you care more about querying, like where, the reason that's kind of a hard question is not so much the technical challenge as much as it is the small things about the goal wind up being a huge factor, not just for your problem, but in general, like when you describe problems of this scope. The little things wind up being a huge factor in the, sort of the architecture concern. So like if your primary concern is always that that 90% of the time you want to query the current version of the document, and querying older versions of the document is important but less important. You design your schema and your architecture drastically different than if you're always querying historical stuff. There is no common pattern of which version you go. So I mean that definitely influences things. I mean the sort of the caveat you put in of we don't want to reindex is also, it's like, well, what does it mean to say you don't want to reindex? Because you could always, especially with like a versioning system, you can imagine the idea that your Solar document represents a change set, much the way SVN stores stuff. so that you're never deleting an old document, you're just adding new ones on top of it. But then you have to worry about, is your goal that people search changes, or is your goal that people search documents? Because then saying find me all documents that mention Eric Hatcher and Cassandra might be hard if Cassandra was added in a commit yesterday, but Eric was added in a commit 10 years ago to the same document. So yeah, I mean, there is no right answer, I guess, to your question. There is a long conversation and requirements gathering process. But I mean, the most native, like if I were trying to do this as part of a hackathon, like let's just like build a prototype in a day kind of thing, I would say you index the full text of whatever the version is, you index it, you never delete it, you keep all the historic documents in their full text. It might be big, you might down the road be like, this takes up too much space. I think this is the problem that like Wikipedia found. They were like always storing every version forever, if I remember right. But that's like the sort of simple, like upfront, like just do that. Flag documents as the newest. When you index a new version of that, you could use the atomic field updates or something like external file field to toggle the bit on the older versions so that you have fast search against the current docs. Another approach might be to go with a split index kind of approach, where you have one index that's small and it's always the current docs, but anytime you replace a document there, you add a doc to your archived index where you never delete. It all depends on the profiles and the types of queries you want to do. I mean, application design and index architecture are just as hard of a problem in Solr as they are in a relational database or anything like that. So I don't know that there's a one-size-fits-all answer. Is there any sort of important things to think about with a question like this that you guys want to add that I didn't cover?
So I a month or two ago, I set up Lucene and Solr in Atlassian and Fisheye. They provide free hosting for open source projects. And the main reason I was interested in doing that is because they provide searching against historical revisions, or at least so I thought. But it turns out what they support is searching against changes. You were saying, is it full documents or changes that they support search against? So you can search against removed lines or added lines or the latest version of a file. And it occurs to me that what you don't want to do is store the full text. So you want all the index terms for each document. So it's possible what you could do is each time you see new revision, you store the full text for that one. When you see a new revision, you go back to the previously latest and re-index it with a diff.
Yeah.
But a reverse diff, like CVS does, right? CVS maintains the most recent version and reverse diffs back to the first revision of the file. And that would save you index space and provide full text searching against the text of each revision.
But again, that goes back to, it's really important to know what kind of questions do you want to be able to answer at query time, because with that kind of approach, you save some space, but like that makes it harder to answer the question of what was deleted in this one, unless you also add that to the doc.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to question our patterns queries, and sometimes a pattern queries can be 10K or 15K length, the length of the query.
Well,
it can be quite huge.
For the queries against your index? Because people like searching full text? I mean,
yeah,
like full. They're like, find me this document, and they give you the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's. Again, that goes. What are you trying? Are you trying? If we ignore the first part of your question, right, about specifically sort of that it's revisions and the file sets, which make it a little more interesting in terms of what you want there. I mean, that's where something like the algorithms and more like this come in handy in terms of trying to figure out what words you can ignore from that input document, like not just stop words, but also the less interesting terms. But again, it depends on what you're trying to look for. I mean, the algorithms for saying find me documents that are exactly the same as this one are usually very different from the sort of normal full text search kind of algorithms with TF-IDF. I know there used to be companies that specialized in that for like fraud detection and stuff, like finding plagiarism. I don't know a lot about what algorithms those guys use. I just know that they at least in their press releases, they talk about how it's a very different problem from normal search problems. So I would assume you would want a very different algorithm. But I've never personally had to look into it much. But yeah, that seems like the kind of thing where you'd want to, as part of your query parsing, take advantage of index term statistics and stuff to know, this term is so common, just fuck it, like throw it out because it's just going to burn me because it's in every document, and I know my other terms are going to prune faster than that. But I don't know. I mean, it depends. It depends on what your goal is. Like how important precision versus recall is in that kind of a problem. So, yeah. Anything else? Oh, there we go. Dynamic filter queries. We use filter queries a lot. Good for you, because everybody should. Some of these are long Boolean queries. Of those, some are static, not changed every day, but only sometimes. The example would be relatively small set, potentially group queries, group labels. The others are very dynamic, change practical every day. Very long Boolean query, thousands of ungroupable. Okay. If we don't cache dynamic filter queries, we save space for useful filter queries, but slow execution. If we do cache dynamic filter queries, we are risking the quick cache flushing. Is there a smart way of handling such a situation? That's a good question. That's a great question.
I have asked it, so...
What's that?
Dimitri Khan, I asked it.
Dimitri, okay,
if you
good.
have any other questions, like, to clarify this?
No, this is... this is a beautiful question. Because it's not a cheap shot like something Mikhail would give me.
By the way, unlike Mikhail, I don't know the answer up front, so you have lots of opportunity to fantasize.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Dimitri. So for people who may not follow this as closely, so what he's saying is, they've got some filter queries that happen all the time, every day, all day, every day, and those are great. They go in the cache, everything's happy, everything's fine, and they're reused a lot. But then they've got these other queries which are big, verbose, long, but they're not unique per user, right? They're still reused, but they're reused for a short amount of time, and then they may change a little bit. And so, you don't want to complete, the example here being, if you don't cache them at all, that helps keep the top example queries in the cache and keeps them fast and from being expunged, but that makes them still very slow. But if you do cache them, you risk throwing out stuff in the top group. Yeah, that's so.
Make your cache bigger.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. Eric just sort of said, the first thing that came to my mind, which is just you might, depending on your usage pattern, be able to just size your filter cache large enough that all of your common queries fit, as well as many of these unique queries as you have on a rotating basis, so that when they expunge other stuff. I feel that doesn't feel like an elegant answer, though. So I'm trying to think of if there's a better sort of a solution to this problem.
If there weren't so many, if there weren't thousands of ungroupable entities, you can make each one of them a filter query.
Well, but they're like in some cases they're ORed here and stuff. So, I mean, I guess so. Dimitri, I guess the one question I have is: are the dynamic ones? Are you currently doing a lot of FQs that are dynamic?
It's just one FQ.
One FQ
with lots of values ORed, like thousands, and they change every day.
Right.
And they're unique per user, and it creates a mess, basically like thousands of filter queries in the cache, and if we allow those, then it flushes even before the commit, So
Sure.
I can give you a subtask if you want. Maybe it's a bit simpler.
Well, no, I'm just hold on. I'm thinking about. I mean, I almost feel like a one solution for this, especially if you know that if you had if I was in your shoes and I had a very common pattern where I had, a half dozen or 100 or whatever common filter queries that I always wanted to cache and everything was great, and then I knew that every query was going to have this one special filter query that might be reused, but not a lot, and that it was going to, I was going to reuse it in every query for a day, and then at the end of that day, it might change. Or maybe it's not exactly a day, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to keep using this one until I don't. And when I don't, it'll be something different. And then I'm going to keep using that. Is that the kind of pattern you're talking about? Like, it's the same for everybody until it changes, and then it's still...
No, it's pretty unique. And problem is that a robot changes the values inside this dynamic filter query every day.
Right, but is it the same for everybody
No,
every day?
it's unique. It's like... certain users subscribe. In this particular example, it's not exact, wording as we have, but they subscribe to different users sort of.
Okay, so every user of your system has a different filter at the bottom here.
Yeah.
But every user is doing multiple queries per day.
Sure.
So so it's the same for them most of the day.
Most probably yes.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
it stays same.
Right. Okay. So I mean, the best solution I could think of with the more specifics you added is not to necessarily improve the cacheability, but to take advantage of post filtering and make it a non-cached post. Increase the cost and implement it as a post filter. I don't know that Boolean queries out of the box support post filter, but you could probably rewrite the query in a way to take advantage of sort of wrap the query in a function that would take advantage of that, so that you could do a post filter on it, so that at least it's not as expensive. You wouldn't be caching it, but you'd only be evaluating it against the docs that already matched. That's the first thing that I would probably try as a way to, the first thing I would do, I guess, is to say don't cache it, and then to make it not painful every time because you're not caching it is to do it as a post filter.
So you mean you would decrease the cost for that dynamic filter?
No. For the dynamic one, I would say cache equals false, cost equals 500 or something. I would label it as a very expensive query so that it was only ever considered against stuff that matched the main query and everything else. That's the first thing I would try.
Okay. Can I still give you the subtask because it's still relevant?
Okay.
So consider the static filter query.
Sure.
Country codes. It's most probably doesn't ever change, but sometimes users untick a country in their UI, and then the filter query does not exist in the cache, and it takes sometimes a minute to execute the query.
Right.
So could you give a way to solve this as a sort of like sampling? So you have executed a filter query for all country codes, you have all doc IDs. Now, if you remove country code, you could still go to the same filter query entry and kind of sample somehow, or can you somehow solve this?
Yeah, I don't know. What would I do in that case? I mean, I would start to sort of rethink the problem, I guess, in that way, and instead think of it as, because part of the issue is that filter queries are inherently intersections, right? So that if you have multiple filter queries, all the documents that match have to match all of the filter queries. It's the intersection of all those sets, and that's one of the things that makes the cache fast. But if you could, for example, I've done custom plugins where I took the union of bit sets out of various queries, right? I implemented custom logic that would build up a filter for me by unioning those things. So what you may want to do is actually implement, forget filter queries, forget doing it at a query level, but have a custom search component where in another cache or in the regular filter cache, you cached the doc set for each country, and then you had your own custom query parameter where you then unioned those. I know we have an open issue where someone's like, I really want an OR-based filter query, and it's just been people have had a hard time kind of thinking of what the syntax should look like without it being hideous. But for a custom case like this, where this is a common problem you have every day, that might be one way to sort of solve that problem. When you're talking specifically about I've got all these countries, but every now and then they drop one. If instead of doing it as here's my small bit set or my small doc set that matches a bunch of countries, now I have to remove one and it grows a little bit, instead have a doc set per country, and those are finite number, and then you're just sort of unioning them. Because you can still cache the union. That's the beauty, right? You can still say, I know what the doc set is for every country. This is a common pattern. I don't know why Angora or Russia or US, I don't know what those three countries have in common, but if lots of people query those three countries, you can still take that union and put it in the cache.
So just want something to add over here.
Yeah.
If you have long Boolean clauses, and he said that he wants to maintain his queries throughout the day, but also doesn't want to destroy his cache. So to go around the problem, you could just build automaton queries and have them execute for one particular use case. So initially they take long time to build, but if you are doing these queries and the queries are maintained throughout the day, just start up early morning, build all the automatons you need, and just keep on running them throughout the day. So it goes around the cache problem. You don't have to build a custom component, and it's still very impressively performant when you have long Boolean expressions.
Well, you would need, when you say automaton query, are you talking about the I mean, you'd still have to have a custom Solar component that build the automaton queries, right? So okay,
Yeah,
I just want to double check because
yeah.
you said you wouldn't need. I'm like, I've been on vacation for 2 weeks, so for a minute I was like, whoa, really? We have something that just automatically does automaton
you would
queries?
need something. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, right. So that's a good point. That's
But,
I mean
like,
that's something.
That's sort of a component which everybody would need. People could just make something.
Yeah, no, we could definitely. What I don't know. Somebody, what's going on now? Nobles, no, hey, no kibitzing. I mean, that's a good point. Automaton queries are something that could also probably help you out here because, particularly because you have a finite set of these countries, right? So you can build that automaton with the known set, and it wouldn't necessarily need to be rebuilt just because you add documents, because the set of all countries isn't going to grow suddenly just because you add a document. So you could probably do some interesting stuff there with an automaton query. I still think though that I'm kind of a simple approach would just be that union, in a custom search component.
We have an LRU cache in Solar, but we don't have an LFU cache. Basically,
yes, that's true.
We need at least frequently used thing fleshed out.
That's a good point.
This case.
That's a good point. Yeah, you could. That's yeah. I don't know why I didn't think of that one. True. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's. Sorry. So this is Noble, by the way. Noble's very rude and interrupts, and it's very animated. And he wrote some of the caching code in Solar, and he's pointing out that most of the caching code in Solar. I mean, it's all very pluggable, but most of the caching code in Solar is an LRU replacement cache. So least recently used stuff falls out of the cache. So when you go over the cache size, just whatever the last thing you touched is. And if you have these sort of common queries and they're just kind of all bubbling around, who knows what the last recently used one could be. But, a least frequently used cache requires more overhead to maintain the cache entries. So it's a little more expensive. What?
Not true.
Okay. In theory, a least frequently used cache is a little more expensive to maintain. Noble may disagree. Math may disagree. Who's to judge? But in theory, it's a little more expensive, which is why a lot of people use LRU because it's supposed to be cheaper. But especially in a use case like this, where you're not going to insert that many things very often, that may be a better way to go, is to use an LFU. We just don't have one in Solar out of the box, but writing one would be, an exercise for the reader, I guess. Do you guys have any additions on top of that?
There's this stuff that Etsy created, and this guy Geo Kincaid has it on his GitHub. That's to handle large Boolean or type queries.
Oh.
There's something out there. I haven't actually looked at what's there,
Okay.
but there is something out there.
So what you're saying is you've heard someone saw a unicorn and that it ran really fast. Okay. No, that's whose GitHub was it?
Geo Kincaid from Etsy.
Okay. So you should check that out. Look at Etsy's done a bunch of really cool Solar Lucene stuff.
It's on their GitHub.
Yeah. So check out their GitHub section.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Anyone?
Anybody?
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Woo.
Well,
Sorry, what was your name again? I know we talked
Matteo.
about much. Matteo, yes.
Matteo.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well,
This is Haas, this is Haas, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm Haas. I'm rude. I'm so sorry. I'm Haas. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I describe a situation that I found in reality. You tell me, you explain why it's like that.
Okay.
So I have
easy one.
Solar 1.4.
Well, there's your problem. Okay, no, I'll roll with it. I'm gonna have to pretend that I'm 5 years younger than I am right now. But go ahead.
Mustn't be too easy. And I have a TAS file in a segment. In a single segment, I have a TAS file which is a bit less than 3 gigs, and an FDT file which is something like 4 gigs. But the NRM file is 60 gigabytes. So can you give an explanation of that?
I'm sorry. Are these
So
index segments?
yeah, sorry. So the question is about, first off, he's dealing with Solar 1.4, which it should honestly disqualify the question right off the bat. But I'll give you a pass on that one.
Okay. Thank you.
But then specifically, he's asking there's some files on disk, and you said like the TIS file is what you say, about 30 gigs?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the
FDT is about 4 gigs.
4 gigs, but then the norms file
is 60 gigabytes.
60 gigabytes. Okay. So sort of the question of being like, why is that file so big?
Yeah,
right?
why is
Okay.
that?
How many documents?
Yeah. Do you know how many documents? Do you remember?
Really not too many, but
Okay.
well, this shouldn't be too important.
Well, no. I mean, it's pretty important.
And how many fields?
Yeah, and the next question is how many fields are in these documents, right? And are you using a lot of dynamic fields?
There are a lot of fields.
Yeah, there's a lot of fields and a lot of dynamic fields, right? So the answer to this question is really a lot about what norms are and how they work the way they do. Norms are a very historic part of the scoring calculation in the default similarity. And the bottom line is, unless you go out of your way to turn norms off, which is actually in newer versions of Solr, the default is that a lot of field types turn norms off. It's 1 byte per document per field, even if that document doesn't have a value in that field. And that's because in order for the length normalization functions to be efficient, it needs a fast array lookup. So even if you only have 100 documents, if those 100 documents have 1,000 fields, but each document has a different 1,000 fields, because you use dynamic fields heavily or something like that, you wind up with 1 byte times 100 documents times 100 times 1,000 fields. So it can get pretty big, which is why there's an omit norms. It's why in relatively historically recent versions of Solr, omit norms is off for most field types. Because especially with things like integer fields and stuff, norms make no sense at all. But I think if you go back as far as 1.4, even integer fields had norms on by default if you didn't turn them off. So that would be sort of my speculation as to why those files are that big. And you're clearly taking notes from Mikhail, because I saw you try to suppress a smirk as soon as I asked about the number of fields. And you're like, oh, it shouldn't really matter too much. Yeah, you knew exactly what the cause of the problem was. And just for that, you don't get a book.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
How to throttle update handlers. Update handlers respond to HTTP requests. Like every good HTTP server, as soon as the connection is established, next thread starts listening. In a setup with a large enough number of feeding Solr will eventually run on memory CPU threads or the resources, rather than hand tuning the number of feeding process. Solr throttles the feeding process such that it does not kill itself, for example, by letting them wait. So, is the person who asked this here? Yep.
There he is.
Okay. I can't see you, but I know that you're there.
Okay.
Well, sorry, what was your name?
My name is Harold.
Harold. Thank you, Harold. So I think the sort of the de facto answer for this at the moment is that this is kind of up to your servlet container. You can kind of, for most servlet containers, you should be able to configure the number of listening threads. And I believe, I'm pretty sure that most of them, I'm pretty sure Jetty will do this at least, you can configure a policy for what happens when you max out that number. So usually, again, this isn't a layer of the app that I tend to think a lot about, but if I remember right, back in the day, there was even a way to say you could have a policy that was just to reject, or there was a policy that said, accept the thread, but don't pass the data onto the app until it's available. So I believe this all has to be done at the servlet container level right now. Hopefully in the future it'll be better, more tightly integrated with Solr once we stop supporting every possible servlet container under the sun. We can actually make it something the code's aware of. But I think right now you have to do it at the container level.
You don't want to do it with distributed search though, because you can get
because you get if you're using Solr Cloud,
way.
Yeah. But that's where the servlet container layer kind of screws us right now. Is you might try to dial this down at the servlet container, and in doing so, you might break Solr Cloud. So,
or just any distributed.
Or
search.
that's true. Yeah.
But we can fix that another way, and then you could do it.
Right, but not as long as it's a generic WAR, right? Is there any way right now you can fix it?
Well, yeah, not easily, because you still have to fix it at the container level. You have to use 2 thread pools instead.
Yeah. So I think that's the answer is today you would have to do that at your container level. You just have to, if you're using distributed search at all, whether it's Solr Cloud or whether it's more old school kind of low-level distributed search, you have to be really careful about how you configure that. But there's not really anything you can do at a Solr level because those threads are managed by the container.
Okay. So, well, maybe a distributed or an update processor could somehow
block
throttle. Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
Not ideal, but you could rig something.
What about
but the data, in terms of things like running out of memory, by the time an update processor gets it, the documents have already been streamed off the wire and parsed and are in an object in RAM.
Yeah, but the update processor can be measuring how fast things are coming in, and well before you hit any limitations could start throttling.
But that's what I'm saying, what would it throttle? The only hook that it has is to stop processing an individual request. It can't stop the parser from parsing the JSON or the XML off the wire. It has no API to do that. That's all controlled at a higher level than that. That's what I'm saying. I mean, maybe you could do it at a request handler level, where the request handler itself said, I'm not going to parse the input stream because I've seen this and I'm going to block. But that seems kind of kludgy. Right, right. Yeah, so it's okay. So what he was talking about was doing more of a pull model rather than a push model, for those who couldn't hear him. Like instead of an update handler where you shove in XML docs or JSON docs or binary documents, which then get parsed, if you have something like data import handler, which is pulling data from other places, it could look at its own internal resources and say, whoa, I need to slow down on my pulling that I'm doing.
And you also get benefits of an AMQP framework to queue and sustain.
Yeah. I mean, if you could put a queuing framework in front of it, sure. I'm trying to think in terms of the sort of more specific question of I'm accepting HTTP requests. Because if you were writing just a generic web application that parsed data and did stuff with it and returned it, you could
AMQP interface.
Yeah, you could slow down and you could say I'm going to accept your connection, but I'm not going to read bytes off of it until I have lower load. There's no real hook for that in Solar at this point.
Yeah.
It would have to be in a request handler that says, I've got my input stream and my request parameters, but I'm not going to start parsing the JSON yet or something. And we don't really have a hook for that. And honestly, like I say, I mean, I think the movement that's sort of happening to pull more of the network stack into Solar and out of a servlet container is probably a better way to solve that problem long run than try to hack it into the update handlers now. Anybody disagree? Miller, would you agree? Yeah. Working on the network stack's better than doing it in the handler?
Yeah, it's definitely better.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to think of a way to do it in the handler. I think you can, but
well, that's what I say. If you actually subclassed the content update handler or whatever it's called, you could say, what does my load look like? Okay, I'm not going to parse. Is a herd of buffalo upstairs? I don't know what that was. I'm not going to parse the JSON yet. I'm just going to leave the input stream alone. And then I think I forget what it's called, the generic update handler, the content update handler, whatever that name was. Then it could avoid that. But the update processor is too late. At that point, all the parsing's already happened. So,
just a question. Did you consider? I don't know if it's reasonable to.
Sorry. I was like the voice from God is talking to me, and I don't know where it's coming from. Yeah.
Dispatch.
Sorry, you're Michael, right?
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
Sorry, I was
Michael
trying to remember. Sure.
Thank you. Dispatch filter. You get in there right at the beginning.
Yeah, no, that's really that's true. I mean, like you're batting around doing it at the request handler level, but you're right. The Solar dispatch filter is really the first front line that Solar has. So you could, I guess, subclass Solar dispatch filter and be monitoring stats in there to avoid it. But at that point, that level of custom code, you might as well just be writing your own custom servlet filter in front of Solar, because then that's from a maintenance standpoint, that's going to be a lot easier to sort of maintain, like as an internal patch. And then it's a generically, you could probably even find a generically reusable servlet filter that does some throttling for you like that, I would imagine. It would be just as easy to write it there, though, or it would be easier to write there than inside Solar, I think. So, any other comments from the judges? Steve looks like you want to say something.
One quick hack that, depending upon if you control the clients, would be to put a hard limit on the servicing threads and the container, and then just have retry wait logic in your client. So
but that would be kind of hard though, because if you can always do the retry wait logic on the client, but making that aware of the load on the server is the hard. Like to preemptively say I don't want to OM my server. How do I dial back before I get to that point? That would be the hard part. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Good question. Thank you.
This is going to be our last question.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
Wow.
At that time
Hold
already.
on, wait. Where was the guy that I said doesn't get a book? I lied. You can have a book. Okay, sorry. Last question. Limit highlighted fields. Suppose you index books by chapter. In addition to general full text index, you also have more specific text index that cover parts of the chapter, like the author. But in the search result, it shows a snippet drawn from the whole chapter, and if you click through the full document, all the search terms are blah, blah, blah. Ideally, if you search in one of the subfields, like author, highlighting will only apply to the terms when they appear in the index content and not in the rest of the document, blah, blah, blah. How can we restrict that? highlighter to only match in the locations by term positions actually match the query. Or am I stupid? Sorry. Okay, who asked this question?
Michael.
Oh, Michael. Okay, so if I understand this correctly, there is the which one is it? There's an option on the highlighter, which is instead of, because the way the highlighter works is it takes your query and there's like a notion of a query builder in the highlighter, and there is an option that requires the fields to match. So if your query is author equals Haas or author colon Haas space content colon Stump, there's a way to run the highlighter where it'll highlight Haas in any field and Stump in any field, but there's another way to run the highlighter where it'll only highlight Haas in the author field.
Yeah, so the question is, I know about that.
Okay, just double checking, because the last part made me wonder.
No, so what we want to do is so there's like basically the author field is really a subpart of the full text.
Sure.
So we have the full text, and somewhere in there the author appears. But we've indexed the author separately. We remember the positions. The positions are drawn from the positions that are in the main document. We want to show you the main document, but with only the author part of it highlighted, and we want to use the position information.
So you're talking. So for example, if I can follow this, for example, you're saying that when indexing the book, the title page has on it both the title and the author and the publisher name, and even though it's in one hunk of text, you have used entity extraction or whatever to pull that out and know that that's the author name. So you want to show them that one page or whatever pages, but highlight on that page the author name. But even if the author name appears in the title or in the publisher. So for example, if Chris Hostetter from Hostetter Productions published Hostetter, My Life as a Dog, when someone searches for author name equals Hostetter, you only want to highlight that in one spot.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, you're right. If you had that position information already, I mean, I think you would, there's no question, I don't think, that you're going to have to go custom logic here, right? I mean, there's nothing inherent in Solar that I know of that'll help you solve this. You could probably write, because the highlighter has different hooks in terms of like snippet generation and formatters, you could probably write a snippet generator, I would think, where you pass in as the input as part of your highlighting the positions that you already know from the other fields, or in your function it goes and pulls them out from the document based on the fields where you put the position information. To say I'm only going to generate snippets around this word if the position, if not only do I find the word, but the position information matches.
Now, is that true? You want snippets. You don't want the whole document highlighted?
No, we actually want. It's okay because we can just say one snippet, right? And
yeah. Well, I mean, your snippet could be the whole thing, but I'm saying as a hook in Solar, I think the snippet generator is the right place to do it.
Well, if you want to highlight the whole thing, then maybe what you want to do is get the positions back to your client and highlight it at the client.
Yeah, you can do all the highlighting.
But if you want snippets,
then
you kind of need Solar to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, if you're going to give the whole document back anyway, you might as well pull the whole document out and pull out the fields that tell you all the position information and then just piece it together to your client. That would probably be just as efficient as doing it server side.
Yep.
You could, but it's just a question of where you feel more comfortable writing the logic.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Anything else from our listed? No? Okay. I think we're good.
Okay. So at this point, the judges need to judge.
The judges need to judge, and while the judges are doing their judging,
you guys tell me.
I think
a few announcements.
I want to make sure their mics are off.
Oh yeah, turn your mic. Yeah, all right, good. So a few announcements. I don't know what the first one is. Right. So the party is tonight, 7 to 9. Judges.
You guys ready?
Judges, running out of time. Right. Okay. People need to get on buses and go to clubs.
You got it.
All right. Woo.
All right.
What time is it? Dimitri wins.
All right.
Number 2 is...
Cover your mics, woman.
Okay.
What time is it? 6:50. When did I say those buses leave? I already forgot.
Okay, we're ready.
Cassandra?
All right, so the judges have decided. Winner is Dimitri's question.
Dimitri!
Dynamic filter queries.
Dimitri, if I'm not mistaken, I know you've come in second place before, right? Did you ever win first place, or did Mikhail always beat you? Mikhail's always beat. Oh, okay, all right. So this is the first time you've come in number 1, right? So, all right. Big hand for Dimitri. Thank you.
Okay, and then second place goes to James Wilson for the point type field
Oh,
question.
James of the point type.
Yes.
Yep, that's good.
Yep.
Hands down, no question.
Yep. And then I had to slide back so I could find his name. Sorry. Yeah. And then third place is Michael Sokolov's question on the
Michael with the
highlighted
highlighter.
fields. So,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody,
very
for your
much.
questions.
Sorry for anyone's question that you sent a question and we didn't get to it. Not any judgment on it, but
No.
the solar user list might be able to help.
Yeah. If you're not on
If
the
you
solar
don't
user
already
mailing
know the
list, you
answer.
should go subscribe. That's a great place to get questions answered. When I'm not on vacation for 2 weeks straight, I read it and reply every day.
Okay. Okay.
What? What?
So the bar's closing, but they've poured several beverages
Right.
that would be also free for the taking.
Yeah. Always take a traveler.
In Florida, that is a rule.
That is a rule in Florida. Yes. Yeah. So I think that's it. Everybody, don't forget you grab your coats on your way out. Head over to the hotels, grab some shuttle buses, get a Guinness on your way out the door, and we'll see you at the party. Thanks, everybody.